I know you said that this is not the final, obviously, the final design. Can you talk a little bit about what the actual vertical idea is at this point? So what you're thinking about at least.
Yeah, as I mentioned, every site, in our opinion, is unique in itself. It's not going to be a glass tower. It's not going to be not appropriate. You've seen a hint of the architecture in the previous submission. There's going to be a combination of masonry, which is reminiscent of the vernacular architecture. There's going to be a combination of glass and solid and stone detail. We envision the lower portion of the tower to be more solid, punch windows. As the tower proceeds to the top, it becomes more and more transparent, more glassy, opportunity for penthouses and balconies. But certainly the lower portion will be more punch window brick looking with stone detail, and as well as the podium. The podium will be much more in keeping with the architecture of the surrounding area.
It seems like the size of the podium is driven by the pricing calculation we alluded to. Did you or does IDI in general project the need for parking going down, because of ride-sharing autonomous vehicles? And if so, is there a time course over which you're sort of factoring that into your design?
Yeah, there are many components. The adjacency to transit, the adjacent university suggests that certainly there would be lower demand for cars. We experienced lately a great demand for car share, especially in Toronto. You provide maybe a certain number of cars that can be rented by the tenants or the purchaser. There is a demand for electric cars, so providing station or parking spot with electrical outlets and things like that are becoming more and more popular. In terms of the overall number, it depends on the location, depends from the city, but we know that there is a minimum below which your product will not be sold. So we have to stay within a certain minimum number to guarantee that my client will be able to sell the product. So maybe a certain percentage, maybe it's going to be lower.
So what's the governing ratio in your
We're looking at least 0.5, 0.6 car per year.
And if you built this 10 years ago, what would that ratio be?
10 years ago? It depends. Again, in a downtown area,
I mean, the same location built it 10 years ago.
It's very difficult to say. I have a building downtown with zero parking. Not to give people the game, but it's right sitting on top of the subway. Indeed, it's being fully sold, right? But I wouldn't repeat that experience because right now, in terms of resale, the units are going to be penalized, right? And so there are extremes. Sometimes we go a very high ratio. As soon as you move away from the downtown core, the ratio goes up. Because we have said that more and more people are going to be driving. So it's somehow it's a compromise that we have to take care of, right? So this podium is actually the right compromise. We don't have the perfect number right now, but I think we can make it work.
I have a question actually about that height. So clearly the combination of units, talk about critical mass, with the minimum number of units to which you can absorb, and you're proposing a 46-story building. To what extent do you see any of that being flexible as you move through the next review period or as you move forward? At what point would you say, or are you saying today that's the absolute minimum you need to go to make this viable?
Well, again, there are going to be studies that Mr. Fane will entertain, but I understand that, for example, from a market point of view and the experience in the Chas building is, and many other buildings, is the following: the top floors. Right now, we're not assuming that we're going to be more than, let's say, 5 or 6 units per level on the top floor. In many buildings, some of those units floor plates become 2 units per floor. As you go down, the unit number will increase, but there is certainly a demand, especially if you go towards the top, to increase the size of the units. That will drop down the number of units, and that will drop down the number of parking requirements. So it's very difficult at this stage to commit. Right now, we're assuming there's going to be a physical floor, and it's going to be carried all the way through. Eventually, the market will dictate, and then will probably drop. And so the fully expanded top floor will have less units, and the market will ultimately
You had a slide on the retail layout. Could you, for the members of the commission and the public, just express the retail maybe in terms of square footage and then how that might relate to the number of tenants that can accommodate and what would be some representative examples of retailers, restaurants, salons, what could be accommodated?
And if I can add to that, it seems like the core building is clearly residential parking associated with that. Could you just comment on the importance of, particularly the right angle, the new, what I call the new retail area as to, are there real synergies there, or what's the rationale for that? It seems like a big land use, but I'd like to understand your perspective of it relative to the residential parking.
Certainly. There were two driving factors. One was, in my opinion, and not in my opinion, but it was discussed also in one stage, the importance of establishing a frontage to the street, an edge to the street. And I'm talking a high rise, I'm talking about pedestrian scale, street frontage, right? And then we're talking about maybe 1 story, this area here. And in terms of the retail, you want to have that maybe at 8 right? The appropriate setting for it. Then there is an issue about the depth of the retail. The depth of the retail dictates also the type of tenancy. We envision certainly ancillary uses to service the population. You're going to have quite a number of units here. So they will need, in our experience, a small food store, cafes, right? Big deal, even in the downtown area. So we suggested that again, in this area here, which is just the result of the geometry of the site, the shallower deck would be very conducive for a cafe situation. There's an opportunity to have this outside area, quite a nice piazza with tables outside. And so this area here will be a smaller retailer, cafe style. But this one here, again, we're building in some flexibility. Maybe there's an opportunity to have a bit of a larger retail. We're not talking about large retail, but again, services that are related more to the usage of the building and the surrounding area as well. So all these frontages, again, these are street frontages. This frontage here, in terms of the relationship to the park, is suggesting all kinds of outdoor activities. And again, there is sort of a restaurant, for example, not a cafe, but a large restaurant. The kitchen is occupying maybe 40% of the whole area. And this is a dark space in the back adjacent to the loading bay that suggests that that's maybe a good location for a kitchen, or back of the house, for a store, or for a restaurant of a certain size. And that will take away, likely, 40% of the square footage. So we're building in also a little bit of flexibility in terms of the type of retailers. On the other hand, we have to take care of all the back of the house facility. You have this angle podium that's coming across. With a natural extension, this angle join basically the upper portion of the podium to the street frontage, and giving us the opportunity for additional depth to again create more flexible space for each of them.
Approximately how large is the larger retail space?
It's probably 9 to 10,000 square feet.
Could you help explain the dotted red lines and then the dotted blue lines and you said this is clearly going to need General Assembly approval, and I just want to make sure we're clarified on what kind of approvals that are above and beyond the commission approvals will be required.
So that the blue line is something that we inherited the old lot configuration. So we departed from that a long time ago. We went into all kinds of different configuration in response to some of the concern. So right now we're suggesting that we have about 55% of the original frontage. The rest is something that is, let me put it this way. we are confident that the black outline is the footprint of the program that we feel is going to be successful in supporting a building of this size. And that's what we're proposing tonight. So that's basically the, what we're proposing to your attention.
And you have to get approval by the General Assembly and the city, am I correct on the, one is for the height variance and one is for actually going into the park side, is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
explain that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Two, before you know whether we can go forward, you go to the
right, so with the height bonus, the zoning there is 130 feet. We're looking obviously to go much higher than that. That would require a change in the city zoning ordinance, and there's a process for that. It takes about 5 to 6 months minimum. So the approval is here to proceed there. In order to reconfigure the parcel outside of parcel 42 with the blue line, that would require General Assembly approval. Pete has had communication with Federal Highway Administration, and I think you guys are all familiar with that. They blessed the conceptually that change, but again, it requires General Assembly approval.
How long would that? That if it's zoning is 5 to 6 months, and General Assembly,
That would be at the discretion of the General Assembly whether they were to take that. If there's a January start point for the General Assembly, it could be taken up any time in the course from traditionally January to June, entirely at the General Assembly's discretion.
so a lot of unknowns right now, which are difficult given the what a major project this could be, so you need to get those two things for sure. So, anyway.
Did you so as it stands now, you have the retail sort of on Fire Street, and then part of the park is sort of only garage. Did you think about having retail sort of on the ground level all the way around so that sort of interfaces with the park?
You suggested to carry the retail over that project?
Yeah.
That's something that needs to be studied. I do have the physical need for maneuvering of the tracking. I need the ramp access to the lower level, to the higher level. So there may be at the end an opportunity to expand under the ramp if the height allows the pillar. But there are many ways to animate a facade. That's not going to be a blank facade. You're not going to feel that it's going to be parking behind. We've had a lot of experience, and I can certainly provide some of the example where we have a podium above grade, which is dedicated to parking, that from a pedestrian point of view, you cannot tell what's behind. It's going to look like a residential building, and there's certainly going to be a very articulated facade. You're not going to have a blank wall with cars. Certainly not about the park. We're very conscious of that. But there is a need there is a back of the house. Every building, whether we like it or not, has a garbage. We always joke in the office, we design our own garbage truck, turning radius, ramp, all kinds of necessary things that we try to hide from the pedestrian rail. That is a reality, especially a building of this size. There is a logistics in terms of the back of the house requirement.
And then all the buildings on here are casting shadows, except for can you comment a little bit about that? About what the I know we're talking about shadows. If you could address that.
Well, it's the going back to discussion on how you place density on the wall. You can choose a slab building, which is going to be 7-8 story. 7-8 story building. All about the front that's going to cast a shorter shadow, but for a much longer period of time. So the nice thing about moving the density of the vertical extension, you have maybe a longer shadow, but for a much shorter period of time. It passes to the side much quicker. So these are some of the, especially in high density situation, we always experience that, and we find that it is certainly the vertical massing is more advantageous for that one, rather than a low building, but with a much longer period of shadow, especially in this case, which is long. So there will be some impact. I'm not saying there's not going to be, but we believe there's going to be a shorter period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.